Good morning, friends. We are here today with Sip with Stacy, and we have our guest today, Lin Van Meter from Missouri, and we couldn't be happier to have her on today. So thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it, and we're excited to get started today. So Sip with Stacy is a live stream. And the idea behind this live stream leadership program is to take a deeper dive into leadership, but more specifically, the leaders that from our council that are living the mission, vision, and values, and to ask them what inspired them to raise their hand and climb their leadership ladder, and what they are doing to continue leadership beyond themselves. Who are they lifting in their lives? And so we couldn't be happier here today to have Lin Van Meter with us. So welcome, Lin.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, good, good. Thank you so much. So, Lin, let's talk about your first beginnings with your leadership and who first tapped you on the shoulder and asked you into leadership.
My background was 30 years in the paint business. So that was a man's world. And, but I wanted to do more than just the decorating. So I got into management that way. Because some of the guys that were my district managers saw something in me. And then as I moved up through the ranks and stuff, that was great. But back in 2004, I got into real estate. My husband had been after me to get into it. He thought I'd be good at it, so I stepped in. In 2010, a friend of mine tapped me on the shoulder for Women's Council. And we were having meetings at our different offices, and we were at our office, and I went downstairs to make sure everything was going good. And they were doing their nominating or talking about nominating for the next year. And Kimberly Abbs Riley tapped me and said, "You'd be a great president-elect. You know, it's that same story everybody else gets. Don't leave the room. You'll be president-elect." So that started my leadership with Women's Council. And I've just been able to work through that and grow as a leader and been able to tap others on the shoulders.
I love that. And I have to say something that I've learned from you. So just a little history here with Lin and I. In 2021, I was national liaison for the Central Region. Lin was in her first year as state liaison for Missouri. So we worked very much together a lot of times. And I have to say, Lin, you were amazing support system for me in your state. You were always, Johnny on the spot, always getting back to me immediately. I just loved working with you. So that was my first time that we really got to, dive deep to get to know each other in our leadership journeys. And I so enjoyed that. But something that I learned from you, Lin, that just really touched my heart is that your ability to wrap your arms around others in your community, in leadership, and you lift them. You are just unconditionally giving to leadership, and you don't mind taking that back seat and elevating others. And I think that speaks volumes of who you are. And that is a true servant leader. So I want to thank you for giving that gift to us in the Women's Council, because that is beautiful. It really is.
Thank you.
And I want to say that Lin Van Meter served 2 terms as a social media influencer for our Women's Council, and also 2 terms as state liaison. So thank you for your service, Lin.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great. I've enjoyed it. It's given me an opportunity to, as a social media influencer, to get to know more and more people across the country. And it's funny when I go to the national meetings to have someone come up and say hi to me that I don't necessarily recognize at that time, but then I realized there's somebody that I've talked to on Facebook or whatever. And so I've gotten to know a lot of people that way. And then You're right. I am one that I look for other leaders. And so it has been important for me to sometimes take that back seat. But they call me Mama Lynn, because I'm one that is making sure everybody's together and everything, doing what they're supposed to do. But it also gives me an opportunity to see who the next leaders are going to be, because we really need those young people to step up and come out.
Thank you for being that support system for others, because that means so much for us to continue our legacy of leadership within the Women's Council and for others. So thank you for being that one that does that for others and being that servant leadership. And I loved how you spoke about when you were a social media influencer, how much that got your name out there in your face, and you were able to communicate with others all around the country just virtually. So then when we did meet in person, you had this connection with all these other leaders around the country. So let's talk
Yes.
about that.
Yeah, that's great, because, you know, a lot of people didn't like the Zoom meetings. They got tired of doing them, but they didn't realize a lot that the education that was being brought to us, but also the friendships that were established, you know. And I think that having gotten to know so many through the Zoom meetings, that when it came to even giving referrals, it was easy because I felt a connection with those people. And then when we see each other, we hug each other, and it's like we just saw each other yesterday, and this may be the very first time we met each other face to face. But I think that you just get to know these people, and you make those connections, and you know that you have the same heart, you know, for your clients, for your other members. And it's just a matter of being there and being out front, that people know that you do care.
That's awesome. I love that. And then let's also just talk about the power of influence and what that platform, you know, as social media influencer did for, you know, that, you know, for you and for others to be able to connect with them, that influence, because I bet you others came up to you and leaned on to you for questions and advice and maybe what their next steps were. Talk about any situations that came from that, Lynn.
It was really interesting, the number of people that would reach out to me and either say, can you publish what we've got going on in our area? Or, you know, we're having this problem. Who do I need to talk to? And I didn't realize that I was becoming that voice for the members, but that's how they were seeing me, to say, you know, I'm having a problem with the microsite. We're having a problem with members. You know, we're having problem pulling more members in, or we're having problems figuring out recycling leadership. What did you do? Who do you do? You know, what are your thoughts? And so I became that person that, you know, we have our mega states. You've got California, you've got Texas, you've got Florida. But the one thing that I found in the influencing was how many of the smaller states reached out to me, and realized that because I was from Missouri, where we only had 7 networks, we weren't a mega powerhouse, but we were front and center in a lot of things that we were doing. And we had that voice for people that they didn't have. And so that has been great, that they felt they could come to me and ask a question, and that even if I didn't know the answer, I'd get back to them with who to talk to, what to talk to, you know, about.
And I love that. That speaks volumes of you, Lynn, that they were comfortable enough to ask you a question, because I think sometimes when we look at those big mega networks, like you had mentioned, California, Texas, Florida, they can be a little intimidating, especially if you're a solo state, you just have one network or maybe two
Right.
networks. When you look at that leadership hierarchy, if you will, of those big networks and what they have there, it could be a little intimidating to ask a question, because you might think to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm going to look foolish, but they felt comfortable enough to come to you. And that means volumes of who you are as a leader, Lynn, and that you make yourself available to others and to help others. So thank you for that.
Sure. The one thing that I noticed is, particularly because of the state liaison and meeting with the national liaison and stuff, we look at those three states as such powerhouses, but they also have the same problems all of our networks have. They have networks that are struggling. They have networks that, they need help. And we don't stop and think about that. So I was able to connect with some people in those other networks that said, we're not the California mega, we're just a small network and we're trying to figure out what we're doing. And so that gave me the opportunity to be able to say, let's see what I can do to help.
Awesome. Awesome. And to all of our listeners out there today, if you have any questions for Lynn, if you're thinking about being a social media influencer or maybe a state liaison, please drop those questions in the comments, and we will ask Lynn, any questions that you might have, or please reach out to her, because she is a great resource to our community. Now I wanted to ask Lynn about referrals and what the Women's Council has done to your business, because Chris Lee had just mentioned when I heard her speak that when they did a survey of our membership, that the number one reasons why members join us is because of referrals. So let's talk about that. What has Women's Council done for your business, Lynn?
It has really helped me to grow. Again, going back to the Zoom meetings, the thing about it is a lot of people will join because they hear that we do referrals, but you've got to get in there and get to know those other members. So the Zoom meetings gave us the opportunity to establish some camaraderie across the country that we could realize, that there was a referral base out there. I used to get one or two a year. The year of Zoom, I ended up in commissions, and this was just me referring out. These weren't people that were referred to me. I made $17,000 in referral money. Woo! Just because I was able to send somebody to Florida, I was able to send somebody to Virginia or North Carolina, somebody to Florida, and it was one of those situations where it was because I made those connections and felt comfortable saying, you know what, this is who you want to talk to. And I've been able to make those connections, like with Tammy Knoll and Adams and Christina Citrano, to say, who in your network would you recommend, to talk to this other agent, so that I could give them a connection there where I may not make anything, but I was able to connect them with another women's council and show the value that we have there.
And it's just good karma, right? To be that connector. I love it.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, Lynn, let's talk about inspiration. Who inspired you?
I think my biggest inspiration is my husband. He has believed in me when I didn't have a clue what I was going to be doing next. When I was in the paint business, our company got bought out by my biggest competitor. And I was in panic mode because I was traveling 9 states selling dealerships. And in those towns, that's where the big hitter Sherwin-Williams was. Well, they were buying our company because our president was going to retire and his kids didn't want the business. And Steve had been after me for about 2 or 3 years to get into real estate. And I really jumped in there, and it's funny because if you know my husband, he is, we call him Eeyore. It's whatever, you don't have to walk that fast. You don't have to move that fast. And so we are true opposites of each other, but he has been that steady person for me. And there are days I come home and he goes, I don't know how you do what you do. And I go, I don't either, but I just keep trudging on, but he really is an inspiration to me. And then other people in Women's Council, we were having some problems with the network several years ago. And so a couple of us that were in leadership went over to talk to them. And one of the young girls, she's about 24, said, why are you still involved in Women's Council? Why are all these old women involved? Well, I never really thought of myself as an old woman, but I realized that the people like Rue Lovett and Marcia Tejan and Marcia Cole that were older, okay, in their mind, they had been leaders that not only were still believed in Women's Council, but that also had grown up into leadership, whether it was in state or national. And I think that those people inspired me to want to be better and to do more.
That's awesome. So
you've also been an inspiration to me because, I wasn't sure after state liaison what I was going to do. And the fact that I've watched you grow and others, take those steps forward gave me an opportunity to say, you know what, this could be my next step.
Well, thank you, Lynn, because you have inspired me and lifted me too. And I just so enjoyed working with you. You were a complete joy. Like I said, always getting back immediately, and just we were the yin and the yang. So I appreciate that. That was a great year, 2021.
Yes, it was.
It was wonderful. Now let's talk about the best piece of advice that you have received from someone in your career in real estate.
Be yourself. Whoever you are, people see. So you have to, it goes back to the saying, you can tell people that you care, but unless they see it, they're not going to believe it. And I'm pretty much what you see is what you get. I can be very emotional. I can be very, I'm not a high D by any stretch of the imagination. I'm an I all the way. I want everybody to have a good time. I want everybody to have the same thought that this is great to be involved. But I do have those times that I have to be that D and say, particularly when you're doing state leadership and you've got to go into, these reports are due. This class you need to attend. This you need to do, and so you become that person also. But I was fortunate with one girl that made a comment from one of our other networks that said, the advantage of having the roadmap come out is that Lynn sends it to everybody to make sure that everyone has seen it. But she also highlights and says, this has to be done right now. So I think that you take on those roles and I'm a rule follower. I came up through the ranks. I did go from president-elect to a 2-year term as a local president. Then I went into secretary for the state, and then you move up and you're president-elect, and then you're president, and then you do the state liaison stuff. So I've always been to go by the way that the rules say.
That's great. That's great. That's good that you're a rule follower too. I always say that clarity moves the train. Vagueville just has us sitting out there. So I like clarity. Tell me the rules and I'll go down
And
that
I'll
road.
follow. I'll do what I'm supposed to do. And don't change them in the middle of the conversation.
Yeah. Let's not change it after you tell me the rules.
That's right.
I love that. I do want to touch on that point because I do love that you talked about your letter in the DISC profile and how important that is to know your own assessment, personality assessment, but also to know who your team members' assessment are and what letter they are, because then you know how to communicate better from them. A wise past national president, Melissa Zimbelman, taught me that a long time ago. You always want to know what your board or your opponent is, even if you're in sales, because then you know what to give them, so then you can achieve what your goal is. And I think that's so powerful. And once that clicks up here, it's really magic. And whether you're using the DISC profile or Clifton Strengths or the colors, whatever personal assessment is best, I think I've done all three of them, but use one of them and really utilize that in your business or even with your family, because it will really be just phenomenal. And you'll see the wins when you communicate and you work with others. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up, because that is so important for all of us to be able to utilize that gift.
Yeah. And I think that it's important that you have all of those in your leadership team. You can't all be D's. You can't all be partiers. You know, you've got to have those people that fit every one of those roles in order to be accomplished.
That's true. That's true. And then also the gift of that is to understand, like, for example, you're an I. If I wanted to come up with a new idea and I wanted your buy-in, as a D, I couldn't just jump on you using the D because you would just back off. I know I have to slide down that scale, that spectrum, and hit the I, so I appeal to you. And so that's the gift, is knowing how to use that spectrum back and forth on the scale, so you know how to communicate with people.
Right.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Now, one of my very favorite questions, Lynn, is, were you born a leader?
Well, in Orlando, I told a story, which is the truth. I never really thought about whether I was a leader or not. I have twin sisters that are a year younger than I am. And when we were about 3 or 4 years of age, my dad and mom got us a wagon. I immediately picked up the handle and started to pull. My sister Dean got behind and started to push, and she has pushed everybody her entire life to get them to do what she wanted them to do. Pat, she just got in and rode. She still just goes along for the ride. We never changed positions. That's who we were. So I've always been a leader and never realized that that's who I was. It was just, that was the role that I took, and I just did it.
That is such a beautiful story. And I heard you tell that in Orlando, and I thought, oh my gosh, that is just pure who you were, because none of you knew at that age how to be anything but who you were, right?
Exactly.
So that is just a true analogy of all three of you. I love that. It almost makes me want to go out and get a wagon for my granddaughter and just give it to her and see what she does with it, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. You know, you don't realize those things from, you know, but at an early age, that's what we did. And I love telling this story because people can visualize it. They can see, you know, us in that wagon and doing that. And we, you know, and again, it goes back to teamwork, because we never argued about what position. Nobody ever said, you know, it's my turn to ride. We just did what we did every single time. You know, of course, in the car, it was like, you're on my side, you're touching me, that kind of thing. But where the wagon was concerned, those were the roles that we took.
Wow. Okay, so everybody go get a Red Ryder wagon for your children for Christmas and just watch them, and then you're going to be able to find out what's happening in your leadership and your children or grandchildren. That totally belongs to you, Lynn, because I will remember that forever. That is such a great story and a great analogy. I just love it. That's great. Well, let's talk about technology. Technology is so important in today's world. Obviously, you know, with the shutdown of COVID and whatnot, we survived because of Zoom. Whether you liked it or not, it was our vehicle to communicate, and it really helped us continue to communicate. We were able to still have conferences virtual. We were able to meet clients, lenders. I remember I would just have my clients on Zoom. We would meet with lenders, get them pre-approved. I'd meet with title, answer any questions. We just were all as a team. So what is your favorite vehicle for technology? It could even be an app, Lynn, but you know, what do you see as your favorite technology that you're using?
It's funny because I don't ever think of myself as being savvy when it comes to tech. I just do it, you know, and you're well aware of that because of me trying to put this filter, the background on this morning. It's like, this was easy last night. For some reason, the sip with Stacy isn't coming on today. But the Zoom did a lot for me. You know, fortunately, Missouri was considered an essential from the very beginning. And so we were still able to get out and meet with clients and talk with lenders and stuff, but it kind of depended on who the company was too. Some of the lenders, their company wouldn't let them, you know, come to the closings or what everything was done by phone. Technology, this is my favorite. I can pick up the phone and call somebody and talk to them. And it doesn't have to be just a text message or whatever, that to be able to have that communication. And I think that we've missed a lot of that. Young people like to text, but I think that where your clients are concerned too, you have to find out what works for them. I've got one client that I worked with this summer. Everything was done by email. She didn't make phone calls. She didn't text. She would send me an email. And if I didn't see it, I was going to be out. So I was constantly checking my email because she was constantly emailing me. But I think that we've lost a lot with a lot of the apps because we've lost some of those personal touches. And I think you have to get back and realize that we all do these tech roundtables. This is the latest and the greatest, but we don't use them. It's one of those things where you stress to your network. You want people to walk out of that meeting with at least one nugget. If they don't, you've just wasted an hour and a half or 2 hours of their time. So if you're teaching all of these apps, teach something that they can cling on to, but they don't need all 10 of them. You just take one that works for you and then go forward from there.
I like that. I like that because sometimes it's just baby steps, right? They have to be able to master one app and then maybe they can go to the next. But yes, I agree with you. The phone, hands down, is the best technology because if I have that phone, I can basically do everything. We can write a contract now on our phone, you know, through Transaction Desk app. It's amazing. And everything is on that phone. So I hold that phone really close to me. It's almost like a pacifier these days, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
But obviously, like Ray just mentioned here in the feed I'm reading, she said, tech is a good tool, but personal touches builds the relationship, and that's the best. And that is so true, Ray, and that is so true, Lynn, because you both said that at the very end. It's maybe that's the vehicle to get you there, to be that connector, but then it's that personal relationship and that connection, that human touch that is going to make that relationship the best it can be and really be lifelong or lasting relationship. So it's just a vehicle, right?
That's right.
That's right. Okay, Lynn, I wanted to ask you, what is the best piece of advice you have for any incoming leadership?
Know what you're good at. We have so many members that are good at one thing, and we don't always tap into it. Ask your people what they want to do. Not everybody wants to be president. Not everybody wants to be involved in the state or nationally. But we're all leaders. You wouldn't be in this business if you weren't a leader. You are responsible for your own growth of what you are selling out there, whether you're a lender or you're a title or you're a realtor. You are that person that leads your business. And so know your limitations, but also expand on them. Know that if someone taps you on the shoulder, they're seeing something in you that maybe you need to take a deeper look into. But we're not all D's, we're not all I's, we're not all S's. And as I have watched people take positions, you realize that we are different leaders. And we're successful doing that. So I think if you realize who you are, then that's the leader that you can become. But also surround yourself with other people that, it's, how many times have we heard there's no I in team? You have to surround yourself with people that are of like-mindedness, but totally different in the way they even do business. But it's important because as you, particularly when you look at your leadership, okay, and you've got your first vice president and your treasurer and all of those, okay, they're going to see those positions in someone else that they can tap on the shoulder. And that's what we need to do, is to constantly look for other leaders and to watch them as they grow and see what help you can be to them. If nothing else, just to be a cheerleader.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's a saying out there, lift as you climb. And that's that's when you're taking the hand of your mentor that's pulling you up, and then you're bringing your mentee along with you. So I agree with you, Lynn.
Well, and I'm using level up with Lynn. We go up those levels. And I think you have to realize where your position is. I was state secretary. It's funny because it seems like every position I had, it was a 2-year type scenario. I was local president for 2 years. I was state secretary for 2 years. I was state liaison for 2 years. But I'm good at those positions. And I know you don't want me to be your treasurer.
I love that.
You have to realize your own limitations, but you also have to be able to realize that if someone taps you on the shoulder, it's because they see something in you maybe you don't see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it, is helping others and facilitating that transition and bringing them into our group. My next question for you, Lynn, is what is something that you want new realtors, just brand new in the business, to know about Women's Council, and why should they join our council?
I think, to me, it was the camaraderie. And I think that new people getting into the business, getting to know other people that they can learn from, but they also are able to make connections with, you know. When you're getting out, when you're working with a client, you want them to have the best lenders.
Mhm.
So when you know a lender that's in Women's Council, and there are 2 or 3 of them that you can say, you know what, everybody has different programs,
Mhm.
but talk to these 3 or talk to these 2 and make that connection. And then you have it with your title people and your warranties and stuff, but also learn from those agents that are there. You will connect with a lot of them. I've got friendships that I would never have had if it wasn't for Women's Council.
Mhm.
You know, Terry Gilmore is our state president this year. Terry lives 30 minutes from me. Had it not been for Women's Council, we would not be the friends that we are. You find those relationships. Tammy Cheryl Short lives in St. Louis. She's got offices in Branson. She's
Mhm.
4 hours from me. But I can call her in a heartbeat and say, you know what, I'm having a problem with a client. What would you do? She's a broker. She can give me that information. I can go to my broker anytime. He's amazing. But you form those relationships and people want you to succeed. So
Mhm.
as a new realtor, getting involved and coming to the meetings and learning the education and taking it in, soaking it up, making it your own makes all the difference in the world.
I agree. I agree. It's all about the relationships, and that we're able to create that web and that net globally and nationally and have those relationships. It's really the gift of Women's Council. I've never seen another organization that's able to do that.
No,
And
agree.
that we're able to help each other, and call and understand the other person and what they're going through. So I cannot agree with you more on that. I do want to talk about major investor, and if you are a major investor, advocacy for us as realtors is so important to me, and so I want to talk about that.
Yes, I'm in the president's circle, so I'm
Awesome.
a PAR, and I've got a really good friend that's Women's Council. Okay. I tapped her on the shoulder and got her involved. And she is probably one of the strongest advocates for RPAC ever. She understands it backwards and forwards and stuff. And she made me a believer, and I realize how important it is that we support that, politically, we've become so separated in the red versus the blue, combats and stuff. But if we really realize that realtors are fighting for everybody's property rights, we are that
purple. We're purple.
We are that purple, and we need to embrace that and realize that that is every dime that I give. I may not be out there shouting about RPAC and stuff all the time, like some people are. Okay. That's not my role. But if I want somebody to understand what it is, I'll tap Jen every time. And she's that come to Jesus meeting person, that you realize that those are, this is important. One of the things that always blows my mind is when we get our yearly invoice for original. Okay. And there is a $25 suggested for RPAC. 15 is all that you need to do to invest, but Kansas City prefers 25.
Mhm.
And I will have people say, do I need to pay that? Yes, you need to pay that. That's how we stayed in business during COVID.
Mhm.
We had people fighting for us that said we were essential.
Mhm.
You know, there's taxes that you don't pay that RPAC kept you from having to pay. So
Mhm.
I think that it's important that people realize what that does for us. And so I'm proud to give my money every year. And I may not know who those people are, but I believe that National has our best interest at heart, making sure that we stay employed, making sure that we stay valuable.
Mhm.
And so I don't have a problem at all.
You have your pin on?
I have my pin on.
Okay, let's see your pin.
There's my pin. R, Crystal R.
There we go. Yay. That's awesome.
And I
No,
wear it every day. I think
Good.
that we don't wear our name tags as much as we used to.
Mhm.
But people will ask you what that pin is. So you can tell them, I'm a realtor and I support property rights and I support you having everything that you need as a homeowner.
Absolutely. Even in your listing presentations, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
that's what's so beautiful about RAPAC is that you don't wait until there's a catastrophe. You build that road, you build those relationships. So then when, for example, COVID hit, we were deemed essential in so many states and we were able to continue our business. We didn't have
Exactly.
to build those relationships because we had
Right.
already paved that road before. And so that's the power of it. And when people ask me, I say the same thing. So thank you, Lynn, for raising your hand and being involved, and especially that extra layer of President Circle that really shows as a realtor that you are invested in not only your community, but other realtors. So thank you
Sure.
for that. Absolutely. Are you going to President Circle this year?
No, I'm not, only
Yeah.
because Steve and I are getting ready to celebrate our 25th anniversary and we're going to go to Kauai at the same time.
Oh, very nice. Happy anniversary.
Thank
Happy
you.
anniversary. Yes. Well, Lynn, you are also running for an office. Could you tell us about that?
I'm running for the national liaison. I wasn't sure what my next steps were going to be after state liaison. And again, you have people tap you on the shoulder and say, you know what, you should do this. And sometimes I look at my age and I think, okay, but there's so many younger people. But then I realize I still have stuff to offer. I still, and I want to be that voice. And I think as going into the national liaison position, I can be that voice, the voice for the smaller states.
Mhm.
When we have our monthly meetings with the national liaison, the state liaisons and the presidents get together, and you realize that we all have the same circumstances.
Mhm.
They're not always problems. You've got positive feedback, okay? But I want to be able to have that voice that says, you know what, it's important. I think the national liaison was probably one of the smartest moves that National ever made, because it gave us that connection, no longer to feel like National was up here, state, nobody knew what they were doing, and then local. And there was always that disconnect. And when we came out with the liaison programs, it gave us the opportunity to feel like we had a voice, that it was important that they knew who the members were. I always refer to Sylvia as boots on the ground, because I think she brought forth that in her leadership, the thing that she came from where we all were. And it wasn't that hierarchy that some of us felt like we didn't matter. But as we got to know our members, and to talk to other people. So as national liaison, I want to be able to reach out to my states, whatever those would be, and say, how can I help? What can we do to make this better? And what are you doing that is so great that I can tell other people about? Because there are people that are having tremendous successes, you know, but we need our members to know that they matter, not be Women's Council without them. And so I think it's very important that we do that. And I want to be able to be that voice for all of them, whether they are in Louisiana or they're in California or they're in Michigan, but to be able to say, I'm here for you. How can I help? And I think it goes back to leadership. You have to be able to reach out your hand and say, how can I help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Lynn, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on Sip with Stacey and to spill the tea about your greatness and leadership. So I cannot thank you enough for everything that you do for the Women's Council and for all of us. So we wish you the best of luck in the future running for your position. And please just keep giving, because we're better because of what you do for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.